Welcome to today's video about foods that raise cortisol. Your morning coffee might be secretly sabotaging your stress levels. That afternoon energy drink could be flooding your system with stress hormones. And those comfort foods you reach for during tough times, they're actually making everything worse. What if I told you that some of the most common foods in your daily routine are silently elevating cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone, keeping you in a constant state of fight or flight? Today, we're exposing the hidden dietary culprits that could be hijacking your body's natural stress response. Before we dive into these cortisol-raising foods that might be sitting in your kitchen right now, if you're new to our channel, welcome to your journey toward better health. We're thrilled to have you here as we explore evidence-based nutrition together. Don't forget to hit that like button if this resonates with you and subscribe so you never miss our science-backed content. Your path to understanding how food impacts your well-being starts here, and we're excited to guide you through it. Oh, and let us know in the comments which of today's foods surprised you the most. We love hearing from our community around the world. The shocking truth is that the very foods many people use to cope with stress are actually fueling the fire. These aren't exotic ingredients or rare substances. They're everyday items hiding in plain sight, consumed by millions who have no idea they're creating internal chaos. By the end of today's video, you'll never look at your plate the same way again. All right, here comes the list of food categories that spike cortisol. Starting with number 1. Refined sugar and high glycemic foods. The relationship between sugar and cortisol is more complex than most people understand. When you consume foods high in refined sugar and simple carbohydrates, you're triggering a cascade of hormonal responses that can wreak havoc on your stress levels. Research has consistently shown that diets high in added sugars, refined grains, and saturated fats lead to significantly higher cortisol levels compared to diets rich in whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. Here's what happens inside your body when you consume high-sugar foods. Your blood glucose spikes rapidly, forcing your pancreas to release large amounts of insulin to bring those levels back down. This creates what researchers call a domino effect on other hormones in your body. The rapid rise and fall of blood sugar triggers your adrenal glands to release cortisol as your body interprets these dramatic fluctuations as a form of metabolic stress. The irony is striking. When we're stressed, we naturally crave sugary comfort foods because eating sugar can temporarily reduce the short-term release of cortisol from acute stress. However, scientific evidence reveals that this relief is short-lived and counterproductive. Foods with lots of added sugar actually increase cortisol levels over time, creating a vicious cycle where temporary relief leads to long-term hormonal imbalance. Studies examining real-world dietary intake have found that people who regularly consume high amounts of dietary sugars show reduced cortisol reactivity following physiological stress. While this might sound beneficial, it's actually concerning because it suggests that chronic sugar consumption may be dysregulating your body's natural stress response system. Your body becomes less capable of mounting an appropriate stress response when it's truly needed. The type of sugar matters too. Research has shown that different sugar-containing beverages have varying effects on cortisol responses. High-dose glucose administration has been shown to enhance cortisol responses to psychological stress, particularly in controlled laboratory settings. This means that consuming large amounts of refined sugars doesn't just affect your baseline cortisol levels. It also amplifies your stress response to challenging situations. Next, food category 2, caffeine and caffeinated beverages. Caffeine's relationship with cortisol is both fascinating and concerning. While your morning coffee might feel like a necessity for starting the day, research reveals that caffeine significantly stimulates cortisol secretion across all waking hours, regardless of whether you're a habitual coffee drinker or not. This isn't just about that immediate caffeine rush. It's about a sustained elevation of your primary stress hormone throughout the day. Multiple studies have demonstrated that caffeine increases cortisol levels even in people who consume coffee regularly. One comprehensive study found that daily caffeine intake causes only partial tolerance to caffeine's effects on cortisol secretion. This means that even if you drink coffee every day, your body never fully adapts to prevent the cortisol elevating effects. The responsiveness was particularly evident in people consuming moderate doses of 300 milligrams per day at home, while higher doses of 600 milligrams effectively abolished the initial morning cortisol response, but still caused elevation during afternoon hours. The mechanism behind caffeine's cortisol-stimulating effects involves the central nervous system, but research suggests it may be sex-dependent. In men, caffeine primarily stimulates central nervous system activity, leading to increased cortisol, while in women, additional peripheral metabolic mechanisms may be involved. This explains why some people seem more sensitive to caffeine's stress-inducing effects than others. What's particularly concerning is that caffeine doesn't just raise cortisol during the time you're consuming it. Research shows that repeated caffeine doses increase cortisol levels across entire test days, regardless of the sex of the subject or type of additional stressor encountered. This means your afternoon coffee isn't just affecting you in the moment. It's contributing to sustained cortisol elevation that can persist for hours. The caffeine content varies dramatically across different beverages, which explains the varying intensity of cortisol responses. Coffee typically contains 80 to 120 milligrams of caffeine per 8-ounce cup and has been shown to cause the strongest cortisol increase of about 50% above baseline levels. Tea, containing 20 to 60 milligrams of caffeine per serving, produces a milder cortisol increase of around 20%. Partly due to the presence of L-theanine, which has calming properties. Energy drinks and sodas fall somewhere in between, with caffeine content ranging from 30 to 300 milligrams per serving, producing moderate cortisol increases of about 30%. Next, food category 3, alcohol. The relationship between alcohol and cortisol reveals one of the most deceptive aspects of modern stress management. Many people reach for alcoholic beverages as a way to unwind and relieve stress. And initially, alcohol does provide temporary relaxation. However, this short-lived effect masks a more troubling reality. Alcohol actually increases cortisol levels as your body processes it, creating long-term stress on your hormonal system. Research consistently shows that alcohol consumption is positively associated with serum cortisol levels in both men and women. A large-scale study involving over 8,900 participants found that genetically predicted alcohol consumption was positively related to cortisol levels in men, with cortisol increasing by 0.18 micrograms per deciliter per drink per day. This means that regular alcohol consumption creates a measurable, dose-dependent increase in your baseline stress hormone levels. The pattern of alcohol consumption significantly affects cortisol responses. Binge drinking appears to be particularly harmful for cortisol regulation. Studies have shown that people who consumed 4 or more drinks in one episode had higher cortisol levels than those who consumed fewer than 3 drinks. This suggests that the way you drink matters as much as how much you drink when it comes to hormonal impact. Long-term alcohol consumption creates even more concerning changes to your stress response system. Heavy drinkers show altered diurnal cortisol patterns with reduced cortisol decline over the day and elevated cortisol awakening responses. Research using hair cortisol measurements, which show cumulative cortisol exposure over extended periods, revealed that alcoholics had 3 to 4 times higher hair cortisol concentrations than abstinent alcoholics or non-alcoholics. The mechanism behind alcohol's cortisol-elevating effects involves disruption of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the body's primary stress response system. Alcohol interferes with the normal feedback mechanisms that regulate cortisol production, leading to sustained elevation of this stress hormone. This disruption can persist even after alcohol consumption stops, suggesting that regular drinking creates lasting changes to your body's stress management capabilities. Interestingly, research has also revealed that the relationship between alcohol and cortisol may be bidirectional. Not only does alcohol consumption stimulate cortisol secretion, but elevated cortisol levels may increase drinking behavior by magnifying alcohol's rewarding effects. This creates a potentially dangerous cycle where stress leads to drinking. Drinking elevates cortisol, and elevated cortisol increases the desire to drink. Next, food category 4, processed and ultra-processed foods. The modern food landscape is dominated by processed and ultra-processed foods that create a perfect storm for cortisol elevation. These foods, characterized by high levels of refined sugars, unhealthy fats, artificial additives, and sodium, don't just provide poor nutrition. They actively promote inflammatory processes that signal stress to your body, leading to sustained, higher cortisol levels. Ultra-processed foods contribute to systemic inflammation, which is a key driver of cortisol elevation. When your body detects chronic inflammation, it activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis as a protective response, leading to increased cortisol production. This explains why diets high in processed foods, fast foods, and convenience foods are consistently associated with higher baseline cortisol levels in research studies. The composition of processed foods creates multiple pathways for cortisol elevation. The combination of refined carbohydrates and unhealthy fats found in most processed foods leads to rapid blood sugar fluctuations and inflammatory responses. Trans fats and excessive saturated fats, commonly found in processed and fried foods, contribute to oxidative stress and inflammation throughout the body. This chronic low-level inflammation keeps your stress response system constantly activated. Research has shown that people with diets high in processed foods demonstrate altered cortisol patterns and reduced ability to regulate stress responses effectively. Studies examining food quality and cortisol levels have found that individuals consuming more low-quality foods show elevated cortisol levels and impaired hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis feedback. This means that processed foods don't just raise cortisol in the moment, they actually damage your body's ability to manage stress over time. The additives and preservatives commonly found in processed foods may also contribute to cortisol elevation through indirect mechanisms. These substances can disrupt gut microbiome balance, and since there's a strong connection between gut health and stress response, processed foods may be elevating cortisol through the gut-brain axis. Additionally, the high sodium content in most processed foods can affect blood pressure regulation and cardiovascular stress, potentially triggering cortisol release as part of your body's attempt to maintain homeostasis. The convenience factor of processed foods creates another layer of concern. When we're stressed, we're more likely to reach for quick, convenient food options, which are typically highly processed. This creates a feedback loop where stress drives us toward foods that actually increase our stress hormone levels, perpetuating the cycle of elevated cortisol and making it increasingly difficult to break free from chronic stress patterns. Next, the cortisol connection. How these foods impact your body. Understanding how these cortisol-raising foods affect your body requires looking beyond individual nutrients to see the bigger picture of hormonal disruption. Cortisol, often called the stress hormone, plays crucial roles in regulating blood pressure, managing inflammation, controlling blood sugar levels, and influencing your sleep-wake cycle. When foods consistently elevate cortisol, they interfere with all of these essential functions. The cumulative effect of consuming multiple cortisol-raising foods creates a state of chronic stress that your body was never designed to handle. Your adrenal glands, which produce cortisol, can become overworked and dysregulated. This leads to symptoms that many people experience but don't connect to their food choices. Persistent fatigue, difficulty sleeping, increased susceptibility to infections, digestive problems, and emotional instability. Research has revealed that the foods we've discussed don't just raise cortisol independently. They often work synergistically to create even more dramatic hormonal disruption. For example, combining caffeine with high-sugar foods can amplify cortisol responses beyond what either substance would produce alone. Similarly, consuming alcohol with processed foods high in refined carbohydrates creates multiple pathways for cortisol elevation and inflammatory responses. The timing of when you consume these foods also matters significantly. Eating high-sugar or high-caffeine foods later in the day can disrupt your natural cortisol rhythm, which should decline in the evening to prepare your body for sleep. This disruption can lead to difficulty falling asleep, poor sleep quality, and elevated morning cortisol levels, creating a cycle where poor sleep increases stress, and stress drives poor food choices. Next, the path forward. Breaking the cycle. Breaking free from cortisol-elevating foods isn't about complete elimination. It's about awareness and strategic modification of your eating patterns. The first step is recognizing that the temporary comfort or energy boost these foods provide comes at the cost of long-term hormonal balance and stress resilience. Consider implementing gradual changes rather than dramatic dietary overhauls. Start by identifying your primary sources of refined sugars, excessive caffeine, alcohol, and processed foods. Then, begin making strategic substitutions that support rather than sabotage your body's stress response. Replace refined sugars with complex carbohydrates that provide steady energy without dramatic blood sugar swings. Moderate your caffeine intake and avoid consuming caffeine late in the day. When it comes to alcohol, if you choose to drink, focus on moderation and timing. Avoid using alcohol as a stress management tool, and be particularly mindful of binge drinking patterns that create the most dramatic cortisol elevations. For processed foods, prioritize whole, minimally processed alternatives whenever possible. The goal isn't perfection. It's progress toward a dietary pattern that supports your body's natural stress management capabilities rather than overwhelming them. By understanding how your food choices affect your cortisol levels, you're taking a crucial step toward better stress resilience and overall health. The foods that raise cortisol are hiding in plain sight throughout our daily diets, creating invisible stress that accumulates over time. From the refined sugars that create blood sugar chaos to the caffeine that keeps your stress hormones elevated all day. From the alcohol that provides false stress relief to the processed foods that fuel inflammation. These dietary choices are working against your body's natural ability to manage stress effectively. But here's the empowering truth. Now that you understand the connection between these foods and cortisol, you have the power to make changes that can dramatically improve your stress resilience. Every meal is an opportunity to support or sabotage your hormonal balance. Every food choice is a vote for the kind of stress response you want your body to have. Remember, managing cortisol through dietary choices isn't just about avoiding certain foods. It's about creating an eating pattern that supports your overall well-being. When you reduce cortisol-elevating foods and replace them with nourishing alternatives, you're not just changing your diet, you're changing your body's relationship with stress itself. The journey to better stress management through nutrition is a marathon, not a sprint. Be patient with yourself as you make these changes, and remember that every small improvement in your food choices is a step toward better hormonal balance and enhanced stress resilience. If this video was helpful, kindly type "yes" in the comment section below. That motivates us to create more content like this. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you found it valuable. Share it with friends and family who might benefit from understanding the cortisol connection, and make sure to subscribe to our channel for more evidence-based health information that can transform your well-being. Thank you for taking the time to learn about how your food choices affect your stress levels. Here's to making informed decisions that support your body's natural ability to thrive, even in our stressful modern world.